disgust. And that's fear. We're Riley's emotions.
Hello, and welcome to Film Rant. This time we review Pixar's Inside Out, the latest film on the list of films that make grown men absolutely break down in tears and remind them that they need to man the hell up. It's cool. It's not like I actually cried or anything. Really, I didn't. Nor did my friend who saw it with me. Nope, we just sat there, dry-eyed through the whole thing. If we cried, then I'm Clint Eastwood.
Holy hell!
Be careful what you wish for, punk.
No!
Anyway, as always, this review contains spoilers, so stop right here if you haven't seen the movie yet. Firstly, we'll talk about the characters. Instead of singling out each emotion as a character though, I'll discuss them as a group. Personally, I found the way Pixar blended the emotions together very, very impressive. Each human character has 5 emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. Now, one thing I'll admit I wanted to see in Inside Out was a few more emotions, such as envy or angst. However, Inside Out seems to blend these similar emotions into the larger ones. There's times when disgust shows envy, and times where sadness is overwhelmed. I also understand that this is a kids' film, so I think Pixar probably did the right thing, keeping the emotions to the basics. Maybe we'll see more emotions in a sequel, no doubt when our main character Riley will be older. All of the emotion characters in the movie are well thought out and well constructed. Each displays their given trade brilliantly, and the chemistry between them is incredibly fun to watch. The way they talk to each other is fantastic. You can tell Pixar wrote the scripts taking into account what goes through a person's head in certain situations. I do wonder why the lead emotion, joy, is called joy and not happiness. Joy is a short-lived emotion, whereas happiness is general good well-being. I just found it interesting that she's called joy, yet sadness is called sadness. Each emotional character is colour-coded, and really effectively colour-coded too. Each colour chosen does generally associate with that given emotion. Yellow, joy. Blue, sadness. Purple, fear. Red, anger. And green, disgust. I would usually associate green with envy, but I suppose envy falls into disgust in some form. Joy is also the only character to glow, which I enjoyed. Just a small detail that added a bit to her character. The colour coding system also helps the storytelling. It's a lot easier for kids to understand the memory aspect of the film simply due to the colour coding. It's an effective design method, but more on that a little later. The human characters in the movie don't have much screen time, so there's not much to say about them. We relate most to Riley simply because we are dealing with the emotions in her head, where we can also see what issues the parents have in their lives with what little time we have with them. However, the only real important human character in this story is Riley, so the parents are there as much as they need to be. Adding in the emotions of other characters regularly would add unnecessary complication, so I appreciate Pixar for sticking with one main character. Now we'll talk about the script, and boy is there a lot to say about it. I'll come straight out and say it's probably one of the best written scripts I've ever seen. Most Pixar films are brilliantly written, as they use the talents of Ronnie Del Carmen and or Pete Docter. Ultimately, Inside Out is a movie about just being human, specifically a child transitioning to a young teenager. All of the emotions that Riley experiences and the situations she gets in are all totally relatable to literally anyone. We see all of her happy memories, her sad memories, and her forgotten memories. We see her create new memories, and what she was feeling when that memory was created. The memories themselves are relatable too. The first time you scored a goal in a sport as a child, your first day at school, or the first Christmas you can remember. It's all a lovely investigation at the human psyche, and it's extremely well crafted. The standout theme of the movie though comes when joy and sadness find themselves lost from HQ, and that theme is depression. We see early on that Riley hates the fact that she's moved house. She doesn't like change, not many children do. She then can't get any of her possessions for a few days. Her parents seem concerned and distant for a short while. Riley feels totally alone, like she's on another planet. It's no surprise that when she goes to school she breaks down when asked to talk about herself in front of a new class. It's interesting that the happy memories she recalls when talking about her previous life in Minnesota turn to sad memories when she thinks about them for a while. This is brilliantly told through colour changes. And it's true. Think about something you used to love doing as a kid, but can't do anymore. It's a happy memory because you felt happy at the time, but you feel a little sad now because you can't do it anymore. So yeah, all of these happy memories turning sad, coupled with the big changes in her life, pushes Riley over the edge as she spirals into depression. Depression is shown extremely cleverly in Inside Out. Riley loses both joy and sadness from her HQ. Her personality islands are also all shut down. I'm not an expert on depression, but isn't that basically what happens? A sufferer of depression can often find themselves devoid of joy. Some also lose a sense of personality and can often seem like they're just living in a shell. Some may still get sad, but in the context of Inside Out, sadness is lost for a reason, and we'll get to that later. Furthermore, the personality island shut down because Riley's core memories become lost or sad. This leads her to forget who she really is. Again, I'm no expert, but some depression sufferers may have this feeling. They may simply lose their sense of self, and that's why it's a struggle to overcome it. When joy and sadness are gone, the other emotions even say,
Riley is acting so weird. Why is she acting so weird?
What do you expect? All the islands are down.
Joy would know what to do.
That's it. Until she gets back, we just do what Joy would do.
Great idea. Anger, fear, disgust. How are we supposed to be happy?
Is this not how some depressed people act? Someone can act happy and joyful on the outside, but inside they are suffering. I'm fairly sure that's why the film is called Inside Out. Even the title relates to depression. Riley finally overcomes her depression because of other people. This is shown via a memory Joy finds. The memory is Riley losing in an important hockey game. Obviously she is sad, but her parents console her. Joy even says out loud after viewing this memory, they fixed her sadness, or something along those lines at least. So it comes as no surprise that when Joy and Sadness finally do find a way back to Riley, she breaks down in tears to her parents, who then help her overcome her depression. That's why Sadness was missing. Sadness needed to be gone for the plot, so that Riley couldn't just tell her parents what was going on. She hides behind sass and anger, which shows at the dinner scene. Sadness is the enabler. Ironically, it's Sadness that helps her overcome her depression. It allows her to cry and let out her emotions. Hugging her parents also restores Family Island, which is the start of the recovery. Depression is a very serious issue, and Inside Out handles it so elegantly and subtly it's a joy to behold, if you pardon the pun. The film is also partly about growing up. I imagine this theme would be focused on more in a sequel, but there's elements of it here. The biggest factor of this theme is Riley's childhood imaginary friend, Bing Bong. Now, Bing Bong is a giant pink elephant crossed with a cat and dolphin, though the dolphin part is just the noises he can make. His physical appearance in itself is specific to something too. There's a phrase, seeing pink elephants, which is a euphemism for drunken hallucinations. While not caused by being drunk, Inside Out would be a totally different film if Riley was off her lips when she was 3, wouldn't it? Just think about that for a moment. Yeah, so while not caused by being drunk, Bing Bong is still a hallucination, in that Riley only creates him in her head. He isn't really there. This is also seen in Dumbo and Winnie the Pooh with the heffalumps. Bing Bong carries joy and sadness through the corridors and passages of long-term memory in order for them to find the thought train and return to HQ. Unfortunately, however, Bing Bong and Joy accidentally end up falling into the pit of forgotten memories. They try to escape via a magic cart that Riley made with Bing Bong when she was younger. It has rockets attached to the back, which are powered by singing a song. However, when Joy and Bing Bong attempt to use it to escape the forgotten memory realms, the cart is too heavy for both of them. Bing Bong sacrifices himself in order for Joy to get back. This moment is Riley growing up. She's losing Bing Bong in order to become happy again. She's changing and adapting to the changes she has in her environment. Inside Out is dripping wet with symbolism, but there's a whole lot on that later. There's a comical scene about midway through where Bing Bong takes joy and sadness through abstract thought. While in there, each character changes into fragments, which is the first step of abstracting, non-objective fragmentation. They then fall apart, which is the second stage, deconstruction. They then turn 2D, which is stage 3. Finally, they become coloured blobs, which is the last stage, non-figurative. This is quite a complex concept for children to understand, but for anybody who understands psychology, this is hilarious. It's this kind of visual depiction of complicated ideas that makes Inside Out stand out so much. Now, as I mentioned earlier, me and my friend didn't cry at this movie. Okay? We didn't. Alright, okay, we did. We really did. I mean, my god, we were getting funny looks. Literally sobbing, and my friend had already seen it when he saw it with me. An example of this sadness is the aforementioned death of Bing Bong. Riley and Bing Bong's goal with the cart when she was younger was to try and reach the moon. Obviously in her imagination, she probably got there. Just as Bing Bong begins to fade and become forgotten, he heartfully and cheerfully says to Joy, "Take Riley to the moon for me." For God's sake, Pixar, what are you doing to me? At that moment in the cinema, my chest uncontrollably contracted. I was fighting tears in my eyes, but my chest told 1,000 stories. I had to do something to distract myself, and I knew my pal was feeling the same way, and I simply just looked at him and said, "For God's sake, man." We both laughed, but it didn't really help. We just managed to recover by the time Riley got back to her parents and began to cry. Now Pixar really did this beautifully. They could have skirted around Riley's pain by making her parents immediately cuddle her and ask what's wrong from the first tear. Then have Riley spout out everything that was wrong and her parents make it all better. It's more real than that. Instead, Inside Out just holds the shot on Riley and lets her cry. We see her let it all out before she finally mutters what's wrong. Her father then tells her they aren't mad at her and he relates to her. He misses home too. Instead of saying,
"Jeez, buddy, it's gonna be alright,"
he actually says something that she can hold on to. He says something that matters. She then falls into her parents' arms with no words and cries into their shoulders. This was an extremely emotional scene, especially for a kids' film. You really feel for Riley in this moment. There was nothing I could do. Me and my buddy were absolutely done. A few minutes later the movie ended and my friend said, "So what did you think of that?" To which I responded, "I think I need some testosterone back. Can I punch you in the face?" Like most Pixar films, Inside Out is incredibly moving, and it is truly a joy to behold. In my book, any film that can provoke an emotional response from its audience has done its job. It's interesting that the emotions in Riley's head are male and female, but her mother's emotions are all female and her dad's emotions are all male. I don't know if this was simply to make it easier for kids to understand, or it's telling us something about Riley's personality. Riley is a little tomboyish in ways, such as her avid interest and skill in ice hockey. She also meets a boy, and when he meets her, his emotions run wild while she remains completely calm. Bing Bong is also male. Maybe she simply gets on with boys better than girls. This is the only reason I can think of the gender difference in emotions. I loved how at the end of the movie, instead of being one emotion, Riley's core memories become a mixture of multiple emotions. As we grow, we develop more emotions. When Riley's advancing into teenage years, all of her core memories are happy. This makes sense because, let's face it, if you have good environmental conditions like Riley has, you'll probably be happy a lot of the time in your childhood. There's no responsibility, no worries, and you can basically do whatever you like, within reason. When Riley advances into her teenage years and everything has changed, she then has a life experience to have core memories of a different emotion. This reverts back to the film simply being about the human condition. It was a lovely way to end the movie, along with joy and sadness becoming the leaders of the emotions, as they are the biggest two in anyone's life, and you need both to cope with whatever life has to throw at you. The only criticism I'd have of this script is I thought the way joy and sadness got back to HQ was a little lazy. Joy uses a ladder of imaginary boyfriends to clamber across back to HQ. On its own, this is quite clever, but considering how deep and meaningful pretty much everything else is in the movie, I thought Pixar could have came up with a return route that had a bit more weight to it. That's literally the only criticism I have of this movie, and to be perfectly honest, calling it a criticism is harsh. Now we'll take a look at the technical aspects of the film, which basically all fall under symbolism. The film is just one massive collection of symbols, all of which are made exceptionally well. All through Inside Out, I was in awe of the sheer amount of symbols and how cleverly put together they are. Obviously, we have the characters themselves, each representing an emotion. Then each colour also represents that character, which then represents the emotion. This then makes the storytelling for memories much easier to understand. As I've mentioned earlier, the personality islands each make up different aspects of Riley's personality. It's what makes her a living person, with opinions, interests and passions. These symbols of personality are absolutely perfect. It was abundantly clear what they stood for and what they were meant to be. There's a running gag through the movie where the guys down in long-term memory sometimes shoot up a catchy commercial jingle to HQ and into the projector. This makes Riley think of the song and hum it. It's a perfect way to display those annoying days where you just can't get a song out of your head. When Inside Out visits imagination, it turns it into a theme park. That is honestly the best way to show imagination I can even think of. Isn't that what imagination is? Wild ideas and crazy turns that you just conjure up in your head? The way they did dreams was hilarious too. There's a film crew who put on a production every time Riley goes to sleep, and they just spout out anything they can. Nothing makes sense. It's made even funnier when Fia has to monitor their production to make sure she doesn't have a nightmare, and he gets bored by the same repetitive dream cliches. Long-term memories are displayed as shelves and shelves of different coloured crystal balls. It's simple, but it's clear what they are. The same can be said for forgotten memories. They are displayed in a dark pit. Literally, the dark pit of Riley's brain is where everything goes to be forgotten. The subconscious is a locked chamber placed just above the forgotten pit, with two guards outside. The train of thought is depicted as a literal train that only operates when Riley is awake. Perfect. If a child understood the human brain and wanted to imagine it, Inside Out depicts pretty much exactly how I think they'd imagine it. Which leads me to my final point. It's absolutely astonishing what Pixar have managed to accomplish with this story. When I first heard the concept, I was absolutely dumbfounded as to how they would even pull that off, especially when their target audience is young children. They do it superbly. Like, really, really brilliantly. It's incredibly clever. Far cleverer than anything I could ever think of. But the best part of it is that it's simple. All of the ideas are clever, but ultimately they are simple. So incredibly easy to understand. This is helped by great visual storytelling through the use of symbols. Pixar and director Pete Docter have absolutely mastered this film, and honestly, regardless of the small criticism I mentioned before, I can't find anywhere where this film could be improved. Many people I've talked to have also said they can't pick one fault with it, and I absolutely agree. So it gives me great pleasure to give the first ever film rant 5 frames out of 5 to John C. So it gives me great pleasure to give the first ever film rant 5 frames out of 5 to Pixar's Inside Out. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Film Rant.
What do we do now?
Nothing's working. Why is